So I want to talk a bit about Caliban. And I also want to talk about the Natarok, which is the new bow that you get as part of playing the new war. The sentient bow, you just get this. It's a cool bow, it's got unlimited ammo, and it's got a very interesting mechanic where you can do quick shots and you can do charge shots. You can also do perfect shots if you pull the bow with the exact right amount before you let go. And it's got like huge multipliers and does big explosion and stuff like that. So I want to talk about sort of like just the overall sort of design ideas behind these two, and how people have talked about. I've seen some comments that this feels like it could be more sort of like in the right direction for the game. Like this is sort of where we would like to see the game go more. When we play the new war, I'm just gonna spawn a Sister of Parvos while I talk about this, because I still need the electricity ephemera, and Caliban happens to be a progenitor for electricity. So let's try to hunt for an electricity sister. Get that ephemera. So a lot of people, when they played the new war, they talked about the drifter gameplay and how it sort of felt cool to be depowered and not be able to wee and woo and bullet jump and not be able to there we go. To just, you know, use our big AoE blasts where we can just destroy a million billion enemies in like a microsecond. Where it's suddenly we had to think about what we were doing. Suddenly we were at risk of dying if we did the wrong thing. We weren't as overpowered. And there's a thing to be said about just, you know, power creep in general. And how that has sort of become a bigger and bigger problem, I guess, for every year. To the point where, you know, now we can just do these big screen wiping nukes with most Warframes. It used to be that some Warframes could do it. Now, like, no, you kind of pretty much everyone can do it. You just have the weapons for it, and it was sort of like a result of the galvanized mods and stuff like that, where they brought melee weapons down a bit. They nerfed condition overload and blood rush and all that a little bit. But mostly they brought the guns up with the galvanized mods to make them sort of as strong. Now, I was in favor of that because I think a gun meta is more fun than a melee meta. I think melee gameplay is less interesting than the gun gameplay is. Mostly because all of melee weapons play the same. You just spam E and you do your thing, and there's no real individuality between weapons. There's individuality between stances, but not between weapons. Oh, whoopsie. Forgot to... Oh, nice. This comes from Nightblade. But the guns all play different. Every gun in Warframe feels unique, and they have their own unique mechanics. So if you have like a meta where you can sort of like build around guns instead, that's more fun. But then the problem is, you know, that it's the same discussion of power creep that I saw before years ago when I played Diablo 3 for many years. When Diablo 3 first came out, you had these different classes. You had the barbarian, you had the monk, you had the
another candidate steps forward in the hope of
you had the witch doctor, you had the wizard, and all of that. And every class, I already have that one at 60%, so I'm not gonna get that sister. And I have to try another one. every class played differently, and every class had different roles. You had your supports, you had your DPS, you had your tanks, kind of like an MMO, but you know, in an action setting. It's more kind of like what Warframe is like. I'd say this is closer to an ARPG like Diablo than it is to like an MMO or whatever, but you still had those different classes. And then, you know, team comps were a thing, where you wanted to run like a 4-man group that had a tank, that had a DPS, that had a healer, or whatnot. And Warframe used to be like that as well, right? Trinity used to be part of the meta. Like, there are mission types where you absolutely want to have a healer/support Warframe. Vauban still does it to an extent. He's not like DPS, but he can just lock down an entire area. If you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm waiting for a treasurer to spawn so that I can get my Granum coin back. I did this mission a bit too fast, unfortunately. But that changed as the game evolved and new updates. Every release got new power for everyone. To the point where, like, at this point, there is no divide anymore between classes in Diablo. Every class in the game is DPS. Monk is DPS. Barbarian is DPS. Wizard is DPS. Witch Doctor is DPS. Crusader is DPS. Every class in the game has these huge room-clearing nukes. And you play every class kind of the same. Because, you know, that's what people wanted. And that's what happened. And, like, enemy density up. Now there's 500 enemies on every screen. You can't even make out any difference between them because there's too many. You can compare that with, like, running a normal survival mission in Warframe compared to running a survival mission in the Steel Path, and just check the enemy spawn rates. Like, that's kind of what I'm talking about here. And when you have an entire screen just filled with enemies, and then you have all of your weapons just are big room-clearing nukes, at some point the entire screen is just visual effects, right? That's all it is. And there's a sense that some finesse becomes sort of lacking from the gameplay. It's not really about finesse anymore. And that can be a problem. I guess it all depends on, like, design goals, right? It all depends on what you want the game to be, what the players want the game to be. Because there is this immediate reward, right? Play a nuke frame, and you click the button. And when you click the button, everything on the screen dies. And you get that immediate little warm feeling that, like, I did that. I clicked the button and I saw all of these big numbers on the screen. And that made me feel good. So I get that. And then you have, like, the other kind of feel good, which comes from, like, just feeling competent. Like, you get that feeling while playing a game like Dark Souls. Dark Souls does not have the big click the AoE button and everything on the screen dies. It would be antithetical? I don't even remember how to pronounce that word. Antithetical. Yeah, there we go. To the idea of what Dark Souls is supposed to be, to even have, like, that sort of gameplay being possible. And when you play Dark Souls, you instead get that sort of good feeling about, you know, your input and your commands from being able to clear challenging content. Like, every single encounter, in a sense, has its own little challenge. Killing one enemy in Dark Souls gives you the same feeling as nuking a room in Warframe. And that's not to say that either feeling is, like, better or worse. Because that's not what I'm trying to like make a point out of. That there's like, oh yeah, harder games are inherently better or something like that. Or is like, this is more of a casual game. So what if it is? Maybe it is a more casual game, but so what? Not every game needs to be Dark Souls. But there is a discussion to be had about like just where does the line go? Do you want this to just be sort of a horde shooter that offers no challenge whatsoever, and it's just every Warframe has a click the button and everything on the screen dies kind of thing, like Hyrule Warriors or what Diablo 3 became? Or do you want it to be more like what, for example, Diablo 3 was in the beginning? We couldn't do that. Oh, Flux Rifle, that's not at 60, so here we go. Get my sister. Hope it's got the electric ephemera.
It is the birth pang of your power.
Yes, Parvos. Where were you during the New War? Where were you? Anyway. But then, like, I don't know, you can't really turn the clock back, can you? Once you've decided that, like, this is what the game is going to be, and then you've pushed it in that direction, and then you get your fans, and people get used to playing the game this way, and you can't really take it away. So now it's like, this is now what Warframe is. And if it stopped being this, I'm not sure people would be happy about that. So maybe you can't turn back the clock. But it's also a case of like, you know, I don't think there's just one Warframe player. I think different players can enjoy different things. I think if you are someone who started playing Warframe in 2013, maybe there are elements of it that no longer exist that you miss. Maybe you're a brand new player. Maybe you don't want Warframe to go back to what it was once back then in the primitive era, because what Warframe is now, or what it is now, is sort of what attracted you to the game. So it's tricky for the developers to sort of like make everyone happy. But they kinda did. At least they went in a really cool direction with the Natarok. It is such a well-designed weapon. It's like very quickly becoming one of my favorite weapons in the game. Because if you just shoot it normally, these quick shots here, there's like, yeah, they do damage and stuff, but it's, you know, you have to aim, and it's just single target, and that's not really what Warframe is about anymore. But then they gave these quick shots forced impact procs, so you could use like the hemorrhage mods to actually build around the quick shots to do like massive damage. And then you have the charge shots, which are AoE explosions, but not if you aim on the ground. You still have to like do a direct hit to actually get an AoE explosion. So if I do this, oh well, damn, he died too fast from other stuff. But if I just shoot at the ground and at someone, like this, it's not gonna kill them. See? It's not gonna do anything. I have to actually hit them point blank to get the AoE. So it takes finesse. That's cool. And then you have the additional thing where like you can just load up a charged shot like this and just pop like that. And that's strong. But then they also reward you for really being precise and you know, getting the bow to the exact spot it's supposed to be at to get that perfect shot and get the really big explosion. And then you get your big AoE blast, so long as you like do a direct hit. So it satisfies a bit of everything, right? You get the big explosions and visual effects and AoE and all that, but it's a reward for skill-based gameplay. That's really cool. And they also made it like absolutely disgustingly strong. Like one of the strongest weapons in the game. So if you can consistently land these perfect shots, this is a world eater. It is an absolutely sickening weapon, but in a like small explosion. It's sort of like a weapon that satisfies everyone, right? It's even a bow, so that sort of harkens back to like ancient era Warframe as well, where bows stopped being relevant unless you could make it a huge room-clearing nuker, like the Proboscis Cernos or the Kuva Brahma. This is not a room-clearing nuker, but it still feels really good and really satisfying and really rewarding to use. I want to applaud them for like designing a weapon like this. It's really something I would like to see more out of them, design-wise, to go down these paths of trying to incorporate things that they are in line with what Warframe players want today, which is like these huge nukes or like AoE blasts, but you don't get it for free. You get it as a reward for playing good instead of just always having it be there. I really enjoy it. Now let's see.
You murdered me, but now I have that whole harness the power of lightning thing, so it's not all bad.
I don't think it's got an ephemera. I also don't like her name. It's a stupid name. Could it at least have a good damage percentage? 34.
The
No.
Lout of the Lotus. Is today the day you push your luck just a little too far?
No, no luck with this one. How sad. We're gonna have to hunt her down and then try this all over again. And then it comes to Caliban, and Caliban sort of like has the same thing going for him, in that, yeah, sure, he's got some nukes, but it's not, his big AoE stuff isn't really where he's at. Instead, he mostly takes on a support role, where he can armor strip, he can stun lock enemies by having them float in the air. He works around, he functions around shields instead of like armor and health, which is clunkier and trickier to get a handle of how to use it correctly. He's got a passive that gives him adaptation, but it's a weaker version of adaptation. It's only 50%, while the adaptation mod is 90%, and they don't stack with each other. So you want the effect, and the effect's good enough to use, but that means you're not going to use adaptation. So he sort of forces you out of the meta. Here's the meta, people. If I take like any goddamn weapon, I can just pick whatever weapon in my list and look at how it's modded. I'm gonna find like Condition Overload, Blood Rush, Weeping Runes, Wounds, Primed Reach, either Primed Fury or Berserker Fury, Gladiator Might, Organ Shatter, and then just like one optional slot depending on how I'm building the weapon. This is like how 99% of all weapons look. This is how you build them. They're always gonna look exactly like this. Let's see. If I take secondaries, I'll take Compressor. And then I look at how it's built. I'm gonna have my galvanized mods. Sometimes I'll have shots, sometimes I won't. Sometimes, if it's an AoE weapon, I'll have Primed Fulmination, sometimes I won't. Lethal Torrent is in all secondaries. There's barely a single secondary that doesn't use this. Primed Heated Charge is going to be in most of them. This one happened to be a status weapon. If it's not a status weapon and like instead a crit weapon or a hybrid weapon, then it's going to look like this. It's going to have the galvanized mods, Pistol Gambit and Target Cracker, Lethal Torrent, Heated Charge. This one goes for Heated Viral. Sometimes you build it a bit differently, but like it always sorta-ish looks the same, with few exceptions. Unless it's like a primer, like an Athodai or a Kuvanuk or whatever. But with Caliban, I enjoy that. It was like you instead of just corrosive prediction, this guy probably wants brief respite because he works on shields rather than anything else. Some people use the Umbral mods in him, some people don't, depending on how you build them. Some people build them for efficiency, like I do. Some people build them for duration. you throw in the Saxum mod, because that actually happens to synergize pretty well with his abilities, because he can lift enemies. He can give them the lifted status effect, which is like only he and Sevagoth can do that. So it's not necessarily a given that you're gonna give him Arcane Grace. You're probably gonna, a lot of people are gonna build him with another Arcane in mind, depending on where you go with him. When you look at like the Helmet system and how to improve him, there's like a couple of different things you could use that are all viable. You can go with Breach Urge, you can go with Resonator, you can go with a million different things, to be honest, and they're all kind of gonna work. So you can think in like sort of different paths depending on where you want this guy to go. It's like a very interesting design. And at the same time, it's like they didn't give him just, oh, here's another Warframe with infinitely scaling damage. Other new Warframes recently, Zaku, he has infinitely scaling damage. Grendel, he has infinitely scaling damage. It's sort of like a theme whenever they release a new Warframe nowadays, that they have infinitely scaling damage. And Caliban doesn't. And yet they still actually manage to make him really viable. Really viable by giving him like really, really strong support abilities instead. And he has survivability, but you have to work for it. He can summon things that give him shields and overshields, but only if he already has shields. It's so cool. It's such cool design. And if this is like where they're starting to think in terms of like where they want the weapon to go, they've talked about how they want to break the AoE meta by having like the galvanized shot, or like the galvanized aptitude mod, sort of like not work for AoE weapons. So it's like it's kind of intentional that they want to have some way of making single target weapons like be competitive by like just here's a really strong mod that you can't use on AoE weapons. So clearly they are aware of the problem, and we kind of want to hit that sweet spot where it's not all about big room clearing nukes, and we can go back to gameplay with more finesse. We can go back to gameplay that is sort of like, just even if it's not a single target weapon, it requires you to use it like a single target weapon. You have to aim for your specific target and hit that target to get the AoE blast. Oh, it's so smart. It's such an elegant solution to that problem. I'm just saying, I really hope we get to see more of it. I hope we get to see more operator gameplay, because that's also depowered compared to the Warframes. I hope that they introduce more stuff where you kind of have to use the operator, or like where you're supposed to use the operator. And I think they are doing that. I think that's the direction where they might be going. And if so, I'm actually very hopeful for the game in 2022. I think this game can go some pretty good places if this is the design philosophy. So I just made this video to kind of give kudos to DE, and like if this is not just like an anomaly and like, oh yeah, the next Warframe is going to be another sort of like infinitely scaling nuke or whatever, then I guess I was wrong. But if this is indicative of sort of like a philosophy of like, this is where we want to take the game from now on, then that's great. That's great, and I hope to see more of it. And I'm gonna keep on telling people that it's great, because hey, it is. Anyway, that's pretty much what this video is about. That's all I wanted to talk about here. So I will see you again tomorrow for something completely different.